Good afternoon, everyone watching us on Eye on the Edge, Galway. And welcome to the European Parliament and to the Hemicycle Hangout that we've planned for you guys. My name is Maria and I work for the European Parliament, and together with my colleagues, we are trying to maybe explain to you how this institution works and at the same time give you some glimpses of the actions behind the scenes. I'm joined here by my colleague, Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I also work for the European Parliament. Thanks so much for having me today, Maria.
Of course. And also another colleague of ours should be roaming somewhere around the corridors of the Parliament. Albrecht, can you hear us?
Hello, a beautiful art piece called Conferences right next to the Hemicycle, where I will take you in a little moment and which you can already see from here.
Nice. Of a vlogger of the day, showing us some images from behind the scenes so that we can make you understand how the European Parliament works and what it looks like over here. We know that it would have been nicer to be able to welcome you perhaps on the spot on our premises, but that would have to wait. And in the meantime, we're happy to host you in this way, virtually. But before we start, we have a little warm-up quiz, and I'd also like to invite Hannah to explain how you can take part and ask your questions.
Yes, exactly. So we will be using Slido today for collecting your questions and your comments. You will see that I've also already posted the Slido link in the chat on Cadence if you're joining us on the Cadence event today. So you can just click on it, and then the little warm-up quiz that we have for you today is the question of, have you ever visited the European Parliament? And I see that someone's already been in Strasbourg, which is good. That's like not where we are today. Today we're in Brussels. I think Maria will explain later how that comes to be, that we have so many locations. But we'll just keep this question open for a little bit while Maria takes us away.
Maybe we can still show you the QR code for those who didn't manage to find their way to the Slido. So there should be a slide appearing with the QR code that you can just hover your phone over it and join the quiz in case you didn't find it through the link yet. So we can just briefly show you that. Hopefully that's fine.
And
Good.
also, wherever you are, if you're joining us on Cadence, if you're asking your questions on Slido, on the live stream, on Facebook, or on YouTube, I will collect them all and I'll pass them along to Maria and Albrecht for sure.
Good luck juggling all those channels.
I know. It's going to be an exciting one. I'm hoping my computer
won't crash with all the questions coming in. Well, no, I think it will still be moderate. Okay.
Probably fine. But until then, Maria, I'm going to let you take it away.
Great. Okay, so let's start with a brief introduction into the work of the European Parliament before I let Albrecht tell us some secrets from behind the scenes. But now I think maybe the colleagues can help put the slideshow on with the presentation. So really, in order to understand how the European Parliament functions, I think the most important aspect to grasp is the basic functioning and legislative procedure of European lawmaking. So in order to understand that, I usually like to kind of just go back to this very simple shape, the triangle with the three most important institutions involved in European lawmaking. And in looking at each of the sides of this angles of this triangle, we understand that each of the institutions involved in European lawmaking has a very particular role and also represents different interests in the process. So obviously, starting with the European Parliament, who does the European Parliament represent? Well, that's a simple question. Of course, the European Parliament is a part of that mix in order to represent the voices and views of the European citizens. So the members of the Parliament are directly elected representatives of the citizens of the European Union. And therefore, the Parliament's functioning also is impacted very much by the citizens' concerns and views that then their representatives are taking forward in EU policymaking. Then, if we look at the other two components on the triangle, So who is actually the initiator if we're talking about EU laws? Let's take the example of single-use plastics. Let's say that that the European Union wants to ban the use of single-use plastics to protect our oceans and seas. Who would be the initiator? Well, that would, of course, be the Commission. So the Commission is the sole initiator of EU laws that represents the common interests of the totality of the European Union. Let's say that the European Commission has now come up with a draft proposals on banning single-use plastics. What happens next is that the same text, this proposal, gets sent to both the European Parliament on one hand and its representatives, meaning the members of European Parliament, the MEPs, and on the other hand, it gets sent to the member states of the European Union. So there, in that configuration, it would be the governments, the relevant ministers of different policy areas discussing with their European colleagues the very concrete changes, adaptations, and changes they'd like to introduce in the Commission's proposal. This would happen in parallel in the Parliament, in the many parliamentary committees, as well as on the Council side. So in the end, all three institutions would have their own position and come together into negotiations. So this is really how all three voices all contribute to the same draft text, which then has to be adopted by both legislators, meaning the European Parliament, as well as the Council. And then the three institutions come together for compromise. And usually it results in something of a compromise where nobody is entirely happy, but also we find a solution that fits and is suitable for the largest amount of views. So that is really the art of compromising on the institutional level. Now, if you look at back at the European Parliament, it's a pretty interesting institution. So where we are sitting right now, we are in Brussels. So this is also known as the heart of the European Union. This is where most of the European Union's agencies and institutions are located. So really where all the nitty-gritty lawmaking and negotiations also happen. And, but it's not all about Brussels. And in the Parliament, we know that very well. So we are also represented in Strasbourg, which is in fact the official seat of the European Parliament. And that is where the members of European Parliament would normally gather 12 times a year in standard plenary sessions, where everybody would come in from their member states and vote on the Parliament's final positions on legislative proposals. Of course, in the last year, as you might guess, we have slightly adapted our way of working, and the parliamentary activities have been taking place primarily from Brussels due to practical reasons and COVID restrictions all over the continent. And then there's also Luxembourg. We mustn't forget about Luxembourg, which hosts a great part of the Parliament's secretariat. So, for instance, some of the Parliament's translators are located in Brussels and are working, in Luxembourg, and are working from there. So we are really living in this kind of nomadic existence between the three cities, split between three countries, and that's just how we like it. Then just going a bit deeper into the MEPs, into their role and what it is that the members of European Parliament actually do. So the first impression that I'd like to leave you with is the diversity of this institution. It's an incredibly diverse institution representing over 190 different national political parties under one single roof. So this kind of depicts the political diversity of this institution. And then looking a bit closer into this institution and its political groups, you can see that all of these national members or parties represented by the members of European Parliament, they gather here in the European Parliament under 7 political groups. These are kind of umbrella groupings that gather like-minded colleagues from different countries and band together on common efforts to make their voices heard. And in order to found, to establish a political group in the parliament, you actually need 23 members at least, and they need to represent at least 7 countries so as to have a nice representation of geographical balance as well as political balance across the European Parliament. And the most important, I would say, the most important facet of this work is the compromising and the negotiation. I already briefly mentioned that in terms of the interinstitutional negotiations and compromises that take place, but it's not only on that level, but it really comes into play in every step of the decision making. In the European Parliament, a member would first and foremost have to convince their own colleagues in their political group to have them together on a legislative proposal that they are driving, because you might have members from various countries that might not always agree on the same positions, even within one political group. So the first step is always getting your own group on board, and then finding compromises and alliances with the other groups in Parliament in order to pass a majority. In the European Parliament, unlike in many national parliaments, there is no permanent coalition or opposition system. So actually, the majorities and alliances have to be built case by case each time a new law is passed. So that's something about the art of negotiation that happens here. And the most emblematic location for that, of course, is the Hemicycle. So next up, I'd like to give it up to Albrecht to show us how that actually works and what it looks like up on the Hemicycle.
Yes, and I'm seated here actually in the place where any one of you could the most important decisions that are being taken by the European Parliament. I'm literally live in the heart of European democracy, as they say. I'm seated on this visitor gallery, and I'm now slowly going to take you into the Hemicycle, not to make you seasick. I hope the gimbal will do its magic. So this is the Hemicycle, where the members of the European Parliament usually only gather a few times, because as Maria said, the official seat is, of course, in Strasbourg, where 12 plenary sessions are foreseen to be held, including starting from next week. And usually members would travel on Monday to Strasbourg, and part of the staff as well. But of course, Corona restrictions also apply to them. And this means that we will have exceptionally, again, as for the many times over the past year, a plenary session, for the taking place in Brussels. Sorry, I told you that the gimbal was not, I think, made for mobile phones from this from the 2020 years, but more for the 2010 years. In terms of what, tell you a little bit more about who they are that they are seated down there. So Maria already spoke about the political groups, about the diversity. They're seated from left to right, as you saw it on the slide. They are also joined in the by members from the, or by commissioners to the left, and the second legislative institution, the council, on the right. And you will imagine that the members that are here, they're actually, as in any national parliament, actually, they're really calling out the commission and trying to get answers, for instance, also on the vaccination, how the contracting has been going on. Of course, one of the hot topics that will also sort of keep the next plenary session live, including a Q&A session with the Commission on the so-called Sofagate, about which you've certainly heard, all of you. Now, before I get you literally seasick, I'll just switch off my gimbal and try to get back to show you me. I'm slowly now going to maybe still say a word or two about these black mirror or black screens that you see. Usually their members would be seeing the agenda, and the members would have the possibility to also see the results of the votes, because of course the votes are the most important thing of what is going on after the debate in show of hands or by voting electronically, but under the current circumstances, with many members actually participating remotely from their permanent representation in the member states, the liaison office in the member state, they actually have to vote by a system which works with email voting. So this is quite a amazing renewal that we underwent with the corona pandemic. For the moment, if you have more questions, I mean, I think Hannah might be able to steer the topics that I should still discuss or talk to you about.
Ever want to switch careers? I think there's something in there for you, vlogging. I think we could probably do that. Yes, we've indeed gotten some questions. We've indeed gotten some questions from the audience. But before I get to the questions, I want to quickly shout out Kanan, who's joining us from Berlin, Andres, who's joining us from Spain today, and then Roisin, who's joining us from Galway. So truly a very European session, it seems, for people logging in from all over Europe. Thanks so much for joining us today. So I have 3 questions at the moment. The first question that I get is from Tommaso, who asked, how did COVID impact the functioning of the European Parliament?
Well, I think Albrecht mentioned already some pretty good examples. I think the most striking example, of course, is also what I referred to in the beginning of this session, is that the Parliament has been convening in sessions here in Brussels and not been traveling in the usual manner monthly to Strasbourg. So this is the most striking difference. But then in terms of the MEPs' work, how they participate in the sessions, I think there are some interesting examples that maybe Albrecht can provide some insights there about the seating arrangements that they have at the moment. And then I'd also maybe ask Albrecht to tell us a bit more about the interpretation and how the Parliament works in 24 languages despite the pandemic.
Indeed, I had to unfortunately abandon my gimbal because otherwise I think I would have started a fire here. So how did you will see that indeed a lot has changed with, of course, COVID, because usually during at least voting hours, this was quite a full chamber packed with people, 705 members, plus commission representatives, plus representatives from the council. Were easily getting into 800 people present in this room, plus visitors. So this was really crowded. And of course, now we have to respect also social distancing in the Hemicycle, and so we have to reduce the quantity or the capacity of it to 1/3, which means that they do not have.
Oh, I think Albrecht has just frozen, but here he is again.
And he's back.
Oh, I think we might have lost Albrecht for a second.
While he tries to reinstall his connection, maybe I can briefly explain what I think he was about to say. It was about the social distancing measures in place in the Hemicycle. So members are now sitting with 3 seats apart, 3 empty seats between each member in the plenary chamber, and every other row in the chamber is left completely vacant. So this is how we ensure that members are not sitting too close together. And and there's also, I mean, they also can participate remotely. This is, of course, something that used to not be possible. You had to physically come to the Parliament, sit on your seat, and physically be there to vote. But now, for the first time in the Parliament's history, the members can participate to debates as well as votes remotely. And this is also something that is quite different compared to the past.
I actually have a follow-up question for that from
Let's
the
audience.
Hear it. So someone is asking, what happens if this voting gets hacked? So like, are there security measures in place for this e-democracy, basically?
That's a really good question, but I would say that definitely this is actually why it took a bit of time to develop a secure voting system that the Parliament's IT services carefully crafted with all the latest security measures so that it can't be hacked from the outside. In the beginning, when the COVID epidemic started, there was a period when members were exclusively only voting by email, and there they had to literally like sign the voting sheets by hand, and they were revised by the parliamentary plenary services to check that everything was in order. But now there is this completely new application which is developed specifically for the European Parliament, taking also care of all of the data protection measures. I think that Albrecht has meanwhile been able to join us.
Exactly. I don't know what you Parliament is here gathering in the Hemicycle, and it's a very nice symbol as well. And now I'm actually going to take you up on what you asked me to do, Maria, to take you and tell you into an interpreter's booth and tell you a little bit more about how interpretation to, I don't know how weather is in Galway, but we're very lucky here but we literally have an amazing sunshine. So we are looking forward to this weekend. But now I'm in one of these interpreters booth. I'm going to just switch the camera view, and you will see literally the view that a member of the European Parliament would have, an interpreter, a member of staff of the European Parliament, would have into the Hemicycle while they do their work. So they will sit here at the place that I'm currently and look down. They have a very simple infrastructure in front of them, which is basically, well, a microphone, which they can switch on. And then you have this amazing red light where you know that now you're basically online and everyone is listening to you. And then they have a few more things, of course, headset to hear the original speaker. And you will wonder, why do we have relay? Why do we have so many buttons down there? Well, this is simply because if you throw a look into the Hemicycle, we have all in all 24 official languages in the European Union and 24 languages into which we interpret. By the way, probably you don't see it, but exactly opposite from here, I look at the interpreter's booth with the name Gaelige on it. Of course, Gaelic is also an official language, and plenary sessions of the European Parliament are being also interpreted into these languages. So just to explain you quickly how this works and why they need so many buttons per booth, and we have 24 languages. Now, 3 interpreters, even if they're really good, they will not be able to cover many more among each other than 15, 16 languages. Let's calculate that, or let's break this down. That still means like languages at least per interpreter. And so we would not be able to cover all the languages with this way. And so for especially smaller languages like Gaelic or also Maltese or Estonian, we would have to work with a sort of relay system, meaning that everything which is interpreted will be interpreted into, let's say, maybe into 16 languages. They're the original from one of their colleagues, meaning they will take, for instance, the Maltese member of the parliament speaks, they will pick it up from the English booth and then bring it into Gaelic. They will bring it from there into Estonian, into Finnish, and so on and so forth. So is a delay because the interpreters are very quick. We're only with a delay of about maximum 5 seconds. So even if we go through 2 languages, we're never more than 10 seconds behind, which is quite important because of course members have a very short speaking time of about maximum 1 minute, sometimes up to 5 minutes, but this is the absolute limit. So they of course try to be really quick in what they're sharing with the crowd, and interpreters have to keep up.
When I was still allowed to come into work, I would just sometimes sit there and like go through all of the languages to just hear them. If you are interested in these languages, right after this session, there's actually another activity on like the work of the interpreters and translators and multilingualism in the EU. So I really, really advise you to stick around. But we have some more questions. So I'm gonna get to those. An incredibly popular question by Emma is how is the European Parliament ensuring that they are accessible to young people? And I want to combine this with another question from Anonymous, actually, on Slido, who asks, how can I get involved with the European Parliament and the work that they do?
Great questions. I think that now, especially in this year, it's especially interesting for young people to get involved in the work of the European Parliament. I'd mention maybe two important ways in which young people can get involved. First of all, I'd like to highlight the European Youth Event, which is the flagship event that the European Parliament organizes every 2 years to young people all over Europe, inviting them usually to Strasbourg for an incredibly engaging session with different speakers, activities, ways to learn about practical and also more theoretical points about the European Union and its legislation. So this year, the I event is going to take place in October, so we invite everybody to get ready for that and give your contributions on that. I think I would highlight an interesting way for any one of you to provide your input onto the European policy agenda by going into European Youth Ideas platform. And maybe Hannah can write the link in the chat.
Yes.
This platform allows anybody to write their ideas, their own proposals on this common platform, to debate it with other Europeans. And finally, the most important and most well thought out, argumented ideas from this platform will be taken on as a part of the I process and will be compiled into the I report, which will be then handed to the European Parliament members and committees on their actual working agenda. So that is a very concrete way for anyone's views to be implemented in the Parliament's agenda. And now this year, I think one of the most important ways to get involved is also through the Conference on the Future of Europe and the youth consultations. Maybe Hannah, you'd like to enlighten us on how that's going to work?
Exactly. So I actually work for the Youth Outreach Unit, who is responsible for the European Youth event that Maria just highlighted. And we are also very involved in the Conference on the Future of Europe, which is an inclusive citizens consultation about what the EU does, what it should do, and really how it works for you. So basically, you can come join and shape the future of the EU. If you want to learn more on this, I really, really invite you to come back to Eye on the Edge at 4:15 Brussels time or 3:15 Irish time. It's a little confusing with the time zones, but you'll get there. For a discussion with MEP Sandro Gozzi, which will kickstart the EP Youth consultations for the conference. And again, as Maria mentioned, we're always happy to receive your IDs on the youthids.eu. And I really just want to mention, you're at Eye on the Edge, you're at a local European Youth event. By just watching us today, you're already getting involved in what the EU does. And we're really, really happy to have you here. We're kind of running out of time, so I'm gonna take 2 more questions from the Slido, and then maybe one final question to wrap it all up. So 2 questions that are also very popular, both by Anonymous, are slightly more technical. Is one, the question, why are there multiple parliament buildings? Like, why do we have 3 seats to begin with? And then also, how is it decided how many seats each country gets?
Right. Maybe, Albrecht, you can briefly open up with that, with the number of seats per country. What's the logic behind there?
So the logic is very simple. It is all about the population size. And then, of course, if you know a bit about the size of the member states, and Malta has only 500,000 as the smallest member state. Now, even if you're not a genius mathematician, you still will probably grasp that it's quite complicated to get a direct proportional set or out of these constraints, and that's why we have indirect proportionality, meaning that slightly smaller countries get a bit more members, and slightly larger countries get a little bit less members, just to make sure that also the interests of smaller member states are well represented, that they can count on a political diversity in the members represented in their in the European Parliament. About the buildings, or do you want to take this one, Maria?
Yeah, sure. I can maybe answer to the question about the buildings. Why is the European Parliament centered in these three buildings in these three cities? Well, actually, that's a very pertinent question, and it's also a quite controversial one, because not all members of European Parliament, in fact, agree necessarily on how the institution functions in practice in these three cities. But I'll try to give a short answer. So as we mentioned, the official seat of the European Parliament is in Strasbourg. This is a practice that actually started right from the beginnings of the European Union, back when there were only the founding member states of the European Union. They all coincidentally happened to be part of the Council of Europe, which is an international human rights organization. And their premises happen to be in Strasbourg. So as in the early days, the Parliamentary Assembly of the EU started to gather for practical reasons in Strasbourg, because the premises of the Council of Europe were in Strasbourg. So this practice later became enshrined in the European treaties, whereby all the member states of the European Union agreed to stipulate it into the European treaties that the official seat of the European Parliament shall be in Strasbourg, and the plenary sessions shall take place in Strasbourg every month. So this is kind of this is really a legal reason. It's a binding decision that is stipulated in the treaties. Now, if you wanted to go and change that, which some members of this parliament have argued, that it might be simpler to work in one location, just pick any one, and they would just stay there. But this decision doesn't merely lie in the hands of the European Parliament, but would also require a unanimous approval by the member states, which is why the decision still today is as it stands, and this is how we work. And for Luxembourg, I think it's the reasoning is very similar, that over the course of the years, the Parliament had a very different role in the past. And some of the services happened to be established in Luxembourg and are still functioning very well from there. And meanwhile, during the course of the years, actually, the Parliament's parliamentary powers have been expanded, and the practical work and collaboration with the other two main institutions located in Brussels has increased. So therefore, it makes sense that most of the parliamentary activity and meetings take place in Brussels, in proximity to the other institutions. So that's, in a nutshell, the answer. But you can surely find more interesting opinion pieces about that online or in the media.
Thank you so much, Maria. And again, because we're slightly running out of time, I see that there's still a lot of questions left. Guys, I'm so sorry we won't get to all of them. But hopefully you'll be able to visit us again soon. And then, we're very, very happy to go through it once again. I think a nice question to end on is the question, what is you guys' favorite bit of the Parliament? So obviously you've been here a while. What is your personal favorite?
That's a really good question. Albrecht, what's your favorite place, and could we maybe see it?
Well, that is quite easily answered. I mean, I just also passed the floor to you, because there were quite a lot of people passing by, simply because one of the sessions of the Parliament, one of the committee sessions, committee meetings, currently, because of social distancing rules, cannot all be in the rooms, but have these mobile booths, which you see right next to me, and they were all coming up and passing by me, and it was amazing to hear this diversity of languages, German, French, Spanish, English, of course, but also Hungarian, Romanian, and Polish, if I'm not mistaken, went past me in only a matter of a minute. It's this diversity that really, I think, is the most amazing thing about working in the European Parliament.
That's a really nice I like about the parliament, my favorite bit about it is that it's really like a village. It's like it has its own hairdressers and dry cleaners and kiosks and sandwich booths and really it's designed for people who spend a lot of time working long hours in these buildings, and it makes the life just very vibrant. You never know who you're going to run into in the next corridor. It might be a head of state from another government, or it might be the MEP that you voted for. So that's always very surprising when roaming around these corridors.
That's nice. I have the same. I would say my personal answer would have been, it's not currently not currently working, but behind me there usually is a bar where you can get a coffee, and I used to like love standing there at the little standing tables because it's so in the middle of all that is happening. And everyone would kind of walk past, walk by, and I felt very like one of my favorite shows, TV shows, is The West Wing, and I felt very like in The West Wing, in the middle of like everything that is happening, in the middle of something important.
Just people watching,
Truly,
looking at
it's the
people
best.
passing by.
It's the best. So we really hope to be able to welcome you so soon, so you can see it in all its glory. I see that there's still so many questions. I'm so sorry we won't be able to get to all of them. But anyways, thank you so much.
We can maybe answer them through social media. If the organizers send the questions to us later, we can publish them on social media or find a way to answer those questions we didn't have the time to take right now on the live session. But I guess that's unfortunately all the time that we have left. Like Hannah said, we'll be very pleased to welcome you in person next time. And Hannah, would you like to give any pointers about the program? Anything else to keep an eye on?
So I've mentioned it a couple of times throughout the session already, but if you were super interested in what Albrecht and Maria were telling you about multilingualism, interpreters and translation in the European Parliament, which again, guys, it's such a fascinating topic. Please stay and join us for the live session that's about to start in 10 minutes with interpreters and translators from the Parliament, so you can hear from them what they do, how they work, and how you can maybe even join their ranks. And then the session later will be about the conference. The session right after that will be about the conference on the future of Europe. We will be joined by MEP Sandro Gozzi, and you will get the chance to really kickstart, the European Parliament youth consultations for the future of Europe. So really, I wouldn't miss out on it. Like, I'm probably gonna, go home and log back in to just join that session. And then afterwards, we also have the House of European History with a workshop on the information revolution from the Parliament again. So I think that's all I have for the program.
So many interesting things to tune into. So from my part, thank you very much for watching us. It was a pleasure to make you discover the Parliament a little bit through this informative session. So thanks from my part, and maybe the colleagues can also say their words of goodbye.
Yes, thanks a lot. Next time we can come to Galway, and if that's not the case, you can come to us. And by the way, virtually you can already come now to us. We're also the Parliament is doing, and this is actually basically Maria and my core job. And to finish off, I've brought you to the photo opportunity where usually President heads of states and governments or delegation leaders from other parliaments to have a nice picture and shake hands, and then go up to his offices into the 10th floor, and all of that at the foot of the art piece conferences that I started with. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.